Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, should US President Donald Trump be actively resisted? Our guest today has been a vocal part of that movement for more than a year now. You may not know his name, but it's likely that you know his work. Today, meet Michael Skolnik.
And I'm Malika Bilal, and I'll be bringing the questions from our community to Michael. Keep them coming with hashtag AJStream, and you can also send them to me via YouTube.
When US President Donald Trump was on the campaign trail, he promised his Make America Great Again slogan was more than just words. It was a movement that would sweep him into the White House. But his election also birthed another movement, one of resistance to him and all that his presidency stands for on the streets and online.
One of the loudest voices of that resistance has been Michael Skolnik, and there hasn't been much that he hasn't commented on. His busy Twitter feed is filled with support for Black Lives Matter, women and the Women's March, and immigrants. And that's just in the past few months. There's also been extensive commentary on Trump, his government, and his actions. Skolnik's activism has been noticed by Trump himself. He was blocked by the US president in September.
Michael Skolnik, CEO and co-founder of the Soze Agency, joins us now from New York.
And joining Michael with their questions, Catalina Velasquez is a DACA recipient and communications director for the End Rape on Campus organization. And Jamia Adams is a digital organizer.
Michael, for some of our international audience who might not be that familiar with you or your work, there's a story I would love you to tell. You were a youngster. It involves hailing a taxi in New York. Pick up the story from there. It kind of shows how you grew up and what motivates you in this world. Can you tell the taxi story?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at those tweets as like the greatest hits of my anger and frustration with Donald Trump. So thank you for
finding them.
Yes, to relive those moments. When I was a teenager living in New York, growing up, I had a moment of awakening, if you will, where I was with a friend of mine who was an older teenager late one night after a party coming out of Central Park. And this is in the mid-90s, looking for a taxi cab to go home. And I'll never forget Omar Green, putting his hand out to get a taxi. I was 14 years old, Omar was 19, and watching taxi after taxi after taxi going by. Finally, a taxi, stopped when I put my hand out to help my friend, and the taxi stopped for Omar, and Omar got in the cab and, in great disgust, having gone through that, I'm sure, hundreds of times in his lifetime. But the first time for me, as a 14-year-old, seeing firsthand the difference of treatment between two friends of different skin color. I walked home that night at 14 years old, not knowing what the words meant or not knowing what white privilege or anti-racism, any of these things that have become part of my life, my life's work, but certainly knowing that that I had something that he didn't have, and that I was treated differently because of that. That was a moment of awakening for me at a very young age, and ever since 25 years later, I'm an older man now. I've been doing the work.
What do you tell people that you do, Michael, when people try and work out, like, hello, Michael, Skolnik, what do you do? What do you tell them?
I tweet a lot. So what do I do? I have the great privilege of working in a company that I'm one of the co-founders of called the Soze Agency. That's a creative agency doing social impact campaigns. It's a workers-owned cooperative. I'm giving the company away to the workers over the course of 8 years. And I have the great pleasure of creating campaigns and working with incredible people around this country, around the world, to try to deliver compassion and try to uplift authenticity and create equity.
So you mentioned you tweet a lot. I'm going to dip right into there on one of the things you've tweeted about not too long ago. This is December 8th, and this is a troubling story for many people in our community and those watching. Warning graphic, you tweeted, "This is murder." And what you're referring to is this incident. This is from the New York Times. This headline, video shows Daniel Shaver, who is a white man, pleading for his life before being shot by an officer. This happened in 2016, and the body cam video was recently released. Here's what people online are saying about it. Otamen says, for those who don't know, Black Lives Matter is fighting for Daniel Shaver, an unarmed white man killed by a white cop. Another person goes on to say, over and over, I see Black folks who advocate Black Lives Matter being just as vocal when white folks like Daniel Shaver are killed by police. It's white people whose advocacy less often crosses racial lines, hence the hashtag. So some heated and pointed comments there, Michael, but what do you make of that? What do you make of white privilege and what it has to do with things like Black Lives Matter, which you're pretty vocal about?
Yeah, and I'm a proud supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement as an ally, as a white person who has seen the great disparities of police violence against communities of color versus white communities. But certainly in this case, we saw a horrible abuse of power by a police officer in killing a white man in this really, really horrible video. And here you playing, Shaun King, who is one of the great leaders of Black Lives Matter movement, was the one who really sort of 117,000 retweets, was the one who sort of brought this video to light to many people. But certainly we see police abuse happening all across this country. We know it happens way more in Black communities, but when it happens to anybody, we should call the injustice what it is. This is murder, in my opinion. It is ugly. It is nasty. I feel terrible for this family, and certainly wanted to make sure we uplift the life of Daniel Shaver because he did not deserve to die at the hands of the police.
I want to show our audience some of your work, some of the work that you do, either the amplification or maybe getting very big names to come over to your idea of what social justice is and use some of their celebrity to do that. Here's LeBron James and Kyrie Irving and the Nets players wear I Can't Breathe shirts before the Cavs game. I can't breathe, you may remember, is one of the last things that Eric Garner said before he was strangled. And then we have here, I am an immigrant, share your story. That's one campaign that you are actually amplifying. Jameer, as a digital organizer, what is it that you want to ask Michael?
Sure. So I know, Michael, that you said that we need everyone in this movement. We need tweeters, we need funders, we need protesters. Talk about what folks you think need to do in this age of Trump, in this age of resistance, to continue to be a good accomplice, to continue to being a good resistor against this whole entire grievance.
Yeah, Jamia, thank you. And I so appreciate your work as well. So thank you for joining us. Weirdly, I've known Donald Trump on and off for many, many years because of my previous relationship in a business that I ran with Russell Simmons. And Donald and Russell were friends. And Donald actually wrote the foreword to Russell's first two books many, many years ago. And so I got the chance to be around Donald over the years. And this man is as vicious, is as nasty, is as sexist, misogynistic, racist, homophobic behind the scenes as he is as the U.S. president. And so what I see happening during this time is that Donald, in his own, national security advisor, H.R. McMaster, not the one who's been indicted, but the new one, in his own language, called him the intelligence of a kindergartner. His own Secretary of State said he's an effing idiot. This man's intelligence level and understanding of the issues is very, very poor. But what he does know is he does know how to build a brand and does know how to start and fight a culture war. And that is what Donald Trump is doing. When he attacks football players, when he attacks the media, when he attacks Jamel Hill, when he attacks Frederica Wilson, there is no coincidence that he consistently attacks Black people. Has he attacked Eminem? No. Question, why not? Eminem is white, but he will happily attack Colin Kaepernick. So as folks who are part of the resistance, as folks who are culture makers, who are artists, who have platforms, we have to consistently push back from a cultural level, not just from a policy level, but from a cultural level. Is that so the Me Too movement, as an example, is a incredibly inspiring movement led by culture, led by women who said enough is enough, inspired by the Women's March, to see a man so vicious and so nasty against women, to say, if we can't beat you in the polls, we are going to speak out loudly about sexual assault and harassment. And you too, Donald Trump, have been accused by 19 women of sexual assault and harassment, and we will make sure the world knows that.
So let me just share this,
Yes.
Michael. You tweeted this out a little while ago. 13 women have accused Trump of sexual assault or harassment. I hear you, Guess. I won't, just give me a moment. And then you list them at the very end. You say, I believe them all. Rather than just the tough criticism you have of President Trump, you actually have had one-on-one experiences with him. Tell us the one that's the most revealing for you.
Well, Russell Simmons and I went to go see him in 2012 when he was ramping up his birther movement and his racist campaign against President Obama. And we sat in his office in 2012 with an imam from, at that time, the 96th Street Mosque here in New York City, and a rabbi, Mark Schneier, from a very prominent temple synagogue. Imam Chomsky Ali was the imam from the 96th Street Mosque. And we begged him to stop with the birther stuff and the nonsense and the racism. And he said to us, that he really believed that Obama was a Muslim from Kenya and that he shouldn't be the president. And we were like, come on, Donald, like, this is bullshit. You should not say these things. And he said, no, I really believe this. And so in his mind, Donald Trump, really believed this. For many of us, we thought this was a game. We thought this was charades. But I saw many times with my own ears and my own eyes, the racist comments, the sexist comments, the anti-Semitic comments. This man is vicious, he's nasty, and he's dangerous.
I think that's something that is, hello?
Yeah, go ahead, we're listening. That's the sound of people listening to you, Catalina. Go ahead.
Yes. I think that what we're talking about is systemic oppression and larger systems that are interlocked with one another. And I think that when you talk about Me Too as an example, it's not just led by women, it's led by survivors. And I think that that's very important at a time where sexual harassment and violence are being denounced at every corner. And we know this is not new. Rape culture has been in place for a very long time, and the fight against racism is one that requires a critical understanding of gender. And so I say this because transgender women of color are being murdered in alarming numbers. And thanks to the courage of survivors and survivor advocacy, more people are denouncing their perpetrators of sexual violence. And so my question to you would be, as a man and a producer, what are your plans and upcoming productions to educate other cisgender heterosexual white men on the need for gender justice so they can join the fight to make this country safer for gender and sexual minorities, as well as harassment and rape-free?
Catalina, thank you. And I do also want to say one thing I think that you raise is also the need for those who are directly impacted to be supported, to be leaders in the movement. And you, as a DACA recipient, certainly as someone who is an ally to the Dreamers, and to make sure we pass a DREAM Act before the end of this year, before December 22nd, and knowing that it is critical that you and others who are DACA recipients are leading that movement as well. And we are supporting that in the same way as you mentioned survivors are leading this movement on Me Too. When you speak of gender, I speak about this a lot as a cisgendered white male, that we, and talking about the transgender, that the murders of transgender women, is the highest we've ever seen. There's 27 murders this year in 2017, the highest we've ever seen on record of transgender people, women specifically, being murdered. And we know transgender women of color are even more of a target. So I think of people like Bambi Salcedo and the Trans Latina Coalition. I think of people like Gino Rosero of Gender Proud. I even think of Trace Lissette, who came out just recently against Jeffrey Tambor on the set of Transparent as one of the actors who is accusing him of sexual assault. So I think as a cisgendered white male, we have a tremendous reckoning to do amongst ourselves. And I hold circle for men often. Matt McGorry, who is a dear friend, who does a tremendous amount of work on this issue. Him and I hold circle often for men, have a lot of conversations of how we bring men into these conversations, because we know that, think about this, something I've been thinking about a lot. If 1 in 4 women in America have been raped, that means, let's say this a small percentage of those that have been raped by serial rapists, that means that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 for that matter, men have committed rape. And what are we doing about that? I got a 4-year-old son. I got a very, very important conversation to have with my son as he grows up. So it's not just about me. Oftentimes we say, oh, we have daughters, therefore we have to have these conversations. No, I have a son. That's why I do this work, is because I have to have a conversation with my son how to respect and treat women.
I think that that's very important, because education and preventing the kind of rape culture that is so rampant, and it's been so rampant since the beginning of this violent country's history. It's important, and it starts at home. But many of us, the undocumented and deferred action recipients, are also women and members of LGBTQ communities. I'm a transgender woman, and if deported, I could be facing a death sentence. Canceling deferred action for childhood arrivals and current efforts by the Trump administration to deport mass numbers of people have disproportionate effects on the ability of immigrant women and LGBTQ folks in denouncing domestic violence, sexual harassment, and rape for sure. You are a renowned producer, and I want to ask and continue asking, how could we break the glass ceiling and get voices like mine, like Bambi Salcedo, and many other trans people into media at a time where it's not politically expedient? And so what are you going to do to create a cultural shift in your role as a very renowned producer, away from rape culture, while exposing anti-immigrant sentiments and policies that, in my opinion, are also anti-survivor? Because I think that when I don't have the opportunity and the ability to reach out to law enforcement and make my pain public as a survivor, that is concerning.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your question, and certainly, respect your work, Catalina. And I think that what I've learned over the course of my lifetime, and as I've gotten older and, wake up in the morning and watch cartoons now instead of watch the news with my 4-year-old son, I realized that a better purpose for me in this world is to amplify and to make sure that the folks who are mostly directly impacted are centered in the work. So we talk about, I was just at a retreat a few weeks ago with Bambi and Gina and Trace, talking about these issues. And the day after we went home on the retreat was a transgender day of remembrance for all those who have been killed. And we made sure that folks who are not impacted by these issues were sharing it on social media. We're talking about it in the news media if they're going on television or going, in front of the press. So I think it's important that we continue to center and uplift, especially when we talk about transgender women. We know as allies that transgender women are a group of people that are right now are really getting it the worst. And it's important that we uplift those stories. So even you being on this program today, I'm humbled that you're even, I'm even sharing space with you and you're having the chance to tell your story. So I'd rather give my time to you and let you tell more of your story, because they should probably hear from you more than they should from me.
So Michael and Catalina, speaking of sharing time, I want to give a little bit of that time to our community who's watching this live as it happens, this show. We asked the question, what do you think it will take for a wider understanding and acceptance of Me Too stories? Similar to what you were asking, Catalina, we got this answer. Miss Gosha on Twitter says, it will take a dismantling of white male privilege. So a part of that answer was seen by people who took to the streets in January of this year for the Women's March. And Jamia, you were pretty vocal about your support for the march. I'm wondering what you think of that person's comment on dismantling white male privilege when it comes to this Me Too campaign.
Yes, sure. So, I worked with the organizers of the Women's March, got the privilege of working on the communications committee, and was just happy to be a part of history. I think that was a really crucial part of kind of like a redirect of the women's movement, of this generation of the women's movement. I think that working to dismantle white male privilege is part of the Women's March, part of all of these different movements. And I think that's definitely a piece of this, of really crushing this cultural piece that we've seen with the Me Too movement. But it's not just white male privilege. We've seen the Me Too movement cross all types of demographics and all types of classes and races and political parties. And it's really something that we have to crush as a group of moral purveyors who are working to do what's right. We, currently have a candidate in the Alabama Senate race who is a pedophile who's running. We've got folks in Congress who are doing this. So it's crushing white male privilege, and it's crushing the sense of power and the abuse of power, particularly sexual power, that men have been using in positions of power throughout all phases of our society.
Jamia, it just reminded me actually, and reminded me also, Michael, of somebody that you work very closely with, and that's Russell Simmons, the hip hop impresario. And he had a moment he's facing right now where women have come out and said, in the past, you did this to me, you assaulted me, you harassed me. What is that like to be in that position where you know somebody who is being accused, and then what do you do? What do you do with that?
Yeah, it's saddening. I'm a proud feminist.
Big out there feminist.
I'm a proud feminist, and it's disappointing. It's saddening that someone you love, and Russell's someone who I love, and a mentor of mine, and my former boss and partner, has been accused of these things, and it hurts, right? But I think more important than how I feel is the women, and again centering them, and centering all the women who have come forward. Courageously, including the ones who have come forward and accused Russell of sexual assault and harassment, but the bravery and the courage of these women to tell their stories. If the tweet about ending white male privilege, and to Catalina's point prior to this, that the fact that cisgendered men have created a culture where we have crushed women who have come forward with these kinds of accusations and questioned them, and created a fear and a culture of silence. Because whenever someone has come forward, we say, you're lying, or you're not telling the truth. To the point, as Jamia just mentioned, this race in Alabama of Roy Moore versus Doug Jones, the woman has to come out with a handwriting expert to prove that that Roy Moore wrote some odd, weird, sexual pervasive thing in her high school yearbook. So I am proud of the women. I believe women. I think men, I would challenge every man who's watching this to believe the women. They are telling the truth. The fact some of them waited 20, 30, 40 years does not matter. And it shows that what we're doing to them now is partly the reason why they have waited so long to come forth, because we consistently attack them, whether it's yesterday or 40 years ago. So I'm a proud feminist. I believe women. I am disappointed in those who I love, but it does not stop me from making sure that I'm challenging any man who's listening to sort of let go of their chauvinistic bias and believe women when they're talking about these issues. And men who've also been sexually assaulted and harassed, who have also come forth and bravely and courageously.
So I want to get one last question from our community members. And Michael, this is Vaishnavi, who says, how many times have you felt like giving up, and how do you drive yourself back into the movement?
Well, if I gave up, that would be a definition of using my white male privilege. I don't have a right to give up. When I see people like Jamia at the front lines or Catalina at the front lines, they are the ones who are directly impacted by the things that I've been fighting for over 20, 30 years of my life. So for me to say I'm going to give up, then I would hope everybody in the movement would question my real intentions of being in the movement. I have no choice but to do the work as an ally. I wake up every single day, and there is no boot to my neck. There is no oppression standing at my front door. So I walk through life fairly easily, and the empathy and the compassion that is inside my heart leads my work to make sure a woman like Catalina can live in this country, probably the country she's only known as her only home her entire life,
Michael
and that Jamia,
Skolnik,
as a woman of color, can live in this country freely as well.
from the Soze Agency, Thank you so much for being part of the stream today. Catalina and Jamia, thank you for joining us as well. Our conversation continues always online. Use the hashtag AJStream. See you soon.